Welcome back to the On the Table Gaming podcast. And this week we're going to be looking at Ice and Fire, the miniatures game. And we are joined by the Song of Ice and Fire game designer, Michael Shinall, and Fabio Cury, the lead game developer. Thanks for coming back on the show, guys.
Whenever you command.
Well, in that case, now that I get like these unlimited wishes, is that how it works? Or
oh yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, we can monkey paw you up however many wishes you want, Chase. I got no problem doing that.
If I recall correctly, last time we spoke, there was a reference that we might get to see some Tormund here, and I can tell you that the fans or a fan was excited to hear that was the case. And so, let's not cut any corners here. Let's get right to the heart of it. Tormund Giantsbane in 2021. Oh, yeah. In the 2021 edition, Tormund Giantsbane Thunderfist, Tormund Giantsbane Thunderfist, aka the warrior that was wished for. Tormund still seems to be all about the charge. So that kind of commander identity is still really carrying through here. And I think maybe does Tormund kind of exemplify a character that maybe hasn't had major changes, but kind of keeps that really core identity alive and it kind of still reinforces that?
Tormund didn't really demand that many changes.
Because you're saying he was practically perfect in every way from the start.
Exactly, that beard man,
So, Tormund now here, he's changed in that he has the Order Overrun. He also has his Furious Charge, and that goes from giving him Sundering on the charge to now when he charges them, the enemy becomes vulnerable. How is this kind of illustrating the overall changes that we're seeing in the faction? And in a lot of ways, he seems like he's staying the same.
I think that Tormund is a great example of how we kept things the same. Basically, beforehand, he already fulfilled his role in the army. He was already fun and relatively balanced. This is actually more of a quality of life change where we fixed a lot of his wording and the abilities that did change, like his previous Shattering Assault, which became Furious Charge. That's just because since the entire faction was updated and modified, in the end, he needed this ability more. Let's say it made more sense inside the faction, but it's still the same theme, and it kind of does the same math-wise as well. The only thing is that the token, you can actually bank on it, right, for a future charge or something like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, he's always been about the charge and getting in there, and it's great to see that his tactics cards, while some of them have changed, overall they're still really keeping that theme pretty closely here. I did note that we did drop, one of his cards has been completely reworked. So now we have a Rush of Aggression. So that's changing now so that it actually helps you close the distance and that you automatically counters rolling a 6 and you gain critical blow. That's huge. But after the attack's complete, the unit becomes vulnerable unless it's Tormund's unit because, Tormund don't care. Now it looks like you're building in kind of a natural skill element where players can really kind of differentiate themselves as they become more experienced when they know how to play this card and then get more out of it or less out of it, depending on how they use it. That's really cool.
Well, with Tormund here, I think it's actually a good one to show because it shows an example of kind of refinement more than anything else. Tormund's identity, he had a strong identity. He knew what he wanted to do. He's all about the charges. So here it was a matter of taking what he did, keeping it and just refining it for, the streamlining process that we did. And you'll see that a couple of things here evident with Tormund's cards. One was, as you saw, Shattering Assault was replaced by Furious Charge. That was Shattering Assault was, while it was a neat little ability, it really wasn't as useful as we want it to be. So that's one of the ones that kind of got phased out a little bit, or I don't want to say completely removed. It got moved to other places. But basically, when we were doing like ability evaluations, if an ability appeared only like once or twice in the game, then we did, that check to see, is this something that we really need to keep in there? If it's a character ability or something flavorful to them, that would be an exception. But if it was like kind of a generic ability and it just wasn't seeing much use, then we either expanded it or we removed it or, moved it into another effect here. So Furious Charge didn't effectively do the same thing, but it's close enough to where, Shattering Assault, and then we're just kind of playing back and forth. So we removed Shattering Assault in favor of Furious Charge. with Tormund's cards here, you'll see a bit of a focus on one of the general changes we did to tactics cards, where you're not going to get so much just free stuff as you are going to be able to just give yourself a little bit more certainty and reinforcing the tactics you already do. So his previous Rust Regression card was just free bonus dice. That's all it gave you. Here, it's going to help you charge by giving you that 6 and give you a bonus on top of that with Critical Blow. But because of those two powerful effects, you do have a negative coming on here. And then you'll see that we replaced Rallying Strikes here with Devastating Impact to, again, focus more here on what Tormund wants to do, which is getting charges. So that synergizes good with his overrun ability, with the natural, things that you're wanting to be doing with charging in there. And so there's a lot more inter-commander synergy with him.
And I like how, I've sort of noticing, we'll get to this in a little bit, that some of the more like selfish commanders where the cards get like kickers or benefit them. So on his Devastating Impact, it's giving out that vulnerable token, which he can do, but now it's like gives you more incentive to play on other units. So it's not like always being played on him, although it's still really good to play on him in itself. And so sort of speaking of these like selfish commanders, then let's talk about Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer. So how did his main card change from his previous edition?
So Jaime actually received kind of an entire overhaul, because Jaime was one of the very first commanders that we ever designed. And he didn't really have too much of a focus on what he did. He kind of did a lot of things, but he didn't even do any of those very well. And he didn't really fall into that jack of all trades category, because that at least gives you some level of flexibility. Jaime just kind of did stuff, but it wasn't even that great. So what we did with him is he got a rework to basically become the rock star of the battlefield. The boisterous Kingslayer himself, nefarious, infamous, the Golden Lion. He is the star of the battlefield. So he's an example of a commander that he buffs his own unit. He gives them agile, gives him counterattack. So if you come after him, he is going to punish you for it. And then all of his cards are focused around me. Look how great I am. Now, that has a bit of a side effect where if his unit does die and go down, that can be a really crippling blow to your army. But that's actually, you'll see that built into his tactics cards, where one of the things we didn't want to have is have a bunch of just dead cards that, you don't want to play, because there's nothing worse than having a feeling of, it's first turn and I drew some cards that I can't use, or it's late game and these are not going to be useful for me. We want cards to kind of be useful in a bunch of situations. So Jaime's here, because they are all directly tied to him, they have a secondary effect where should he get slain, you can just kind of pitch them and draw cards. So you're never going to have a situation where your all-star dies and then you're going to draw 3 cards up and not be able to play any of them, because that's a little too punishing.
Yeah, it's good to note as well that he doesn't need to be dead or destroyed for you to play these cards with their draw card effect, with their cycling effect. And this can still fit thematically because he is Jaime Lannister. He just decided he wanted to put the Lannister agenda ahead of his own, which is feasible. So it's just a reminder so people don't think that he has to be dead for you to recycle the card.
So he's just got enough battlefield experience and knowledge and know-how that he can adapt on the fly if necessary.
Exactly. But at the same time, his cards are super good, right? Because you can only pitch them or on him or his bubble there. So I don't see why players would do that. But if they do see that the card won't be effective for them, it's still an option.
That's awesome. So you're not getting locked out of the cards anymore if that happens. And especially with the card hand size, protections now being capped at 5. That means when you always have an option in your hand, right? You're not getting completely locked out if you somehow got a handful just of Kingslayer cards and he's not in an optimal position or he can't do what you want. You got other things you can do. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, most definitely.
I feel like he needs an updated theme song or something now. He's going to get a lot more table play and just being the rock star.
I mean, in these situations, I will always recommend just, live to win. So,
And then I suppose we can talk about these Night's Watch here with Jeor Mormont, the 997th Lord Commander. And we see him gaining Dauntless and Embolden. So kind of inspiring the Night's Watch, who already have pretty decent morale stats, even further. And that's kind of an interesting choice because it seems as though vow mechanics are tied off of the morale test now. Is that accurate?
Not really. There are some that trigger off of that, but Jeor here is an example of a morale-based commander. Now, Jeor is kind of an in-between thing because what he previously did, he did very well. But we revamped the way that the vow mechanics work. So therefore, he had to change. So while previously he had a cool identity of like, okay, I'm going to really push on these vows and I'm going to make my unit this big juggernaut. Because we did those changes to the vow mechanics and remove them from being zone dependent, as we've talked about previously, then his mechanics just didn't work with the transition. So we kept his identity. We just had to change his mechanics around.
Yeah. And a little bit more on that. I'd say that now, like you said, the Night's Watch already have a pretty decent morale. And you might think, well, why would I choose? He actually works as a failsafe, right? He's a very good failsafe commander, especially if you're against a matchup where your opponent is trying to have that morale damage through you, right? So if you're playing against Lannisters or Boltons, Jeor is a very interesting choice. At the same time, also, the fact that he does benefit morale in general also helps his tactics cards, which are conditioned on morale tests, to activate. Yeah, he works really well now. And like Michael said, he wasn't revamped because he wasn't working before. It's just because he wouldn't work now.
Well, it's so cool because with Embolden, I mean, you're going to have some really good morale. Then it's going to really help you get your tactics cards out there. And yet, once again, there's room for that skillful play or to be skillfully outplayed. If he's getting like off on his own, you could still use like a panic-based list now to kind of deny certain cards being played, because you may be really going to kind of double down and get rid of that unit's morale because maybe that extra boost from Jeor, isn't around because he's too far away. So it seems like there's like a lot of other cool like moving pieces to think about now with this commander, and it's just fun to see how the game's like opening up in new ways, and maybe not always new ways, but familiar ways, but with like kind of different interplay. I'm like kind of just looking forward to like kind of getting in and like relearning how to play commanders and like kind of experiencing the game with like fresh eyes.
Well, so one of the big focuses of this was, as we've said before, change wasn't done for the sake of change. We do things to balance purposes, but we also want it to be, a fun experience. And one of the primary things that I always wanted to see for Song was your commander choice matters. And I've said this since day one. Rulebook points out every panel I've done, everything since then. Your commander matters, and that should define not just because I'm playing this character because I love them, but because of a play style. You don't want to have, you could have an entire faction of Lannister commanders, and if they all play the same, then it's just kind of discouraging. If my Tyrion didn't play different than Tywin, didn't play different than Gregor, well, in that situation, there'd be something really wrong. But each commander should be bringing something to your army that you can't find anywhere else in your faction, or, there has to be a reason why you're bringing them. And being able to just switch out your commander, this is one of the goals that we had was, you can be playing the exact same army setup, same units, same NCUs, and just switch out your commander, and all of a sudden a world of different possibilities is opened up to you. That's always the vision goal. And, we took this pass to really make a refinement on that, to make sure that was the case. So if you're playing Lannisters or, playing Free Folk, I guess if you want to for some reason, but actually I will use Free Folk as an example here.
There you go. Uh-oh. It's going to be a bad example, I can tell. I feel like if you want to kill an enemy, kill Free Folk.
Well, Free Folk, because they are set up, as different, basically tribes, banded together, under the influence of, one king beyond the wall. They have a, drastically different play styles. I'm not going to say more than any other faction, but they have a big diversity of what they do, because they have to be these big, larger than life charismatic characters to be leading these bands. So Harma does not get along with Rattleshirt. They don't play the same. Mance is, basically playing the father that's coming in, making sure all the kids don't kill each other. Meanwhile, Tormund's over here just, drunkenly charging into things. It's like the world's biggest dysfunctional family reunion. But you have these different personalities there, these different archetypes. And that's the idea of the commanders, is that I want to play this faction because I like them. And then I like this play style. Is there a commander in here that allows me to do that? Or in some situations, I didn't even know I wanted to play like this. Like, let's go to Greyjoys. You can play them as just a straight up raiders and everything and take Vicarion. But all of a sudden you put Euron as the charge of your army. And now all of a sudden you're playing mind games with your opponent. And that was drastically different than when I was playing as Vicarion, and I was just charging things and making them dead.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Greyjoy talk. Yes. I mean, that's really one of the fun things about this game, though, right? Is that the commanders do matter. And I know you harp on that, but like that's part of the fun layers of it. And I think that's what keeps people coming back, is because you can have a fan favorite character, but there's also plenty of other ones to explore. And every time you play, you buy a heroes box and suddenly you've got, hours of additional ways to configure your army. Kind of the joy of the game. Well, this is amazing. So here's the question. And so, what might we have in store then for future visions here? We've seen commanders, we've talked about attachments, NCUs. What do we have down the line?
Okay, so we've already addressed, I think, all the elements in the game, explained their thought process and given some examples, right? But we haven't really deep dived into any specific factions or anything like that. So for the future, you guys can probably expect now some faction deep dives, I'd say.
Awesome. Oh man, that'll be exciting. And start to get a kind of a better picture of, what things are going to look like and shake up for these different factions. And so later today, then you're going to be doing for those of you listening on the same day this releases, later today, you guys are going to be doing a live stream Q&A on Facebook on the official A Song of Ice and Fire and Cool Mini Facebook page. And so, you're going to be fielding questions from the community. And is that something we might see kind of going forward more regularly as well? I know you did one, maybe it was last month, not too long ago. It's pretty cool to get the chance to have everyone interact with you in that sort of capacity.
Yeah, we want to do more and more of these, not just to be transparent, but also to be engaged, right? We loved the last one. We like the questions that people are asking, and it was really fun. So why not do more of these, right?
We saw you guys play a battle report at one point. I feel like, Fabio, maybe you're the undisputed champion here. Are you getting a crown or a belt? And are there going to be future battle reports? Are you going to challenge other people at CMON? You guys start throwing down. How does this work? Are you growing out a braided tail, like a hair tail, and you're going to like be like Khal Drogo?
Oh, I actually cut my hair on quarantine, unfortunately.
No.
But
listen.
Yeah, I'd say like, if you win one for public record, then you better not play anymore and just keep your victory.
Oh, I see. Is that how it is? Oh, okay.
I mean, I will state that like that is one of the mantras is, you win one game, then you retire undefeated and unchallenged. But I have to say that Fabio here was apparently so worried about a potential rematch that not only did he lock me out of his country, but he locked me out of my own country for the last, 13 months at this point.
That's unlimited power. You're calling up the foreign governments, Fabio, and being like, "Hey, listen, I need a favor. Do you know who I am?"
I just called old Walder Frey and told him to cut Michael off.
That's hilarious. Well, thank you guys so much for coming by. I know this is a quick one. The commanders look great. We're really excited to see these faction deep dives. I think actually at one point we kind of got off track a few episodes ago. We never really got to talk about a lot of the Greyjoy stuff that came out. So in the future, maybe we can even dig through some of that. I know people are really excited, and that's going to be great when those get out and people are raiding the shores of Westeros. So we're looking forward. We're eagerly awaiting.
Chase?
Yeah. Don't do it.
Oh, wow. Did you sense a storm coming? Okay.
I did sense the storm coming.
So, how, at the very start of this, I made a bit of a monkeypox comparison, right?
Uh-oh.
Let's go ahead and
I renounce my wish.
Out,
this is
You can't renounce a wish once it's been fulfilled. Come on.
Oh gosh. All right.
So let's speak to your listeners out there, since I do like the idea of doing some faction deep dives. So I suppose we'll ask the listeners out there what faction they would like to see covered first. Now, of course, Chase, we don't want to play favorites here. So since we, let you choose the last one of Tormund, I suppose free folk are off the table for that one for a while.
I feel like that might be fair.
I'm sorry, I have to cut in. Free folk are off the table.
That's very off-brand. That's like that'd be my evil alter nemesis, like my alter ego that has like, instead of a beard, has like a thin mustache or something. So I think that's fair. I did get some messages. I love you guys, and thank you for your messages about my choice of last episode picking Tormund. People had lots to say. I always appreciate feedback, and I think that's probably right. We'll put this out in the community's hands this time. So how about this? When I post this episode in the Facebook group, go into the comments, drop some messages there. Let us know which faction do you think should be the one that gets deep dive next.
We'll be lurking.
They're always watching. Thank you so much for coming on. And for everyone listening, in the meantime, I hope you get your miniatures on the table.
Yes, off the table.
That is my alter ego. My alter ego is actually a skeleton named Bones. So